Yes, I haven't started.
Great, thank you. All right. So thank you all so much for being here today. Kim, do you mind sharing the slides? I can share them too if that's better. Awesome. Thanks, Kim.
I'm all good.
So thank you all so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come here and talk with us and provide some ideas and provide different perspectives. And we are very excited about the work we have to do today. We do have a very busy meeting, but I think it's going to be a very productive meeting too. And so I'm excited to see what comes out of this meeting and to see what kind of ideas that we're able to develop as a team that we're going to be able to continue moving forward in our work to develop the Pathways to Excellence licensure model. Next slide, please. So we do have quite a bit on our agenda today. We will be, first of all, looking at our agenda and minutes as we always do. We'll also be doing some overview of our estimated timeline and some important reminders. We will then kind of look at what our subcommittee priorities and responsibilities are. Then we're going to do an overview of an updated infographic model. And Julie Pittman from the superintendent's office, she's the special advisor to the superintendent on teacher engagement. So she will be sharing that model with us to get our perspective on it. We'll then move into breakout sessions where you'll be talking about some different things that we may look at changing or modifying as we move forward in our work. We'll come back to whole group discussion, and then we will move on to the adjournment. Kim did send out the meeting minutes from our March 25th meeting. You have the agenda here, so we are going to go ahead and approve those. So if I could please get someone to make a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. And if I could please get someone to second that.
Second,
Jill.
Dyson.
Great. Thank you. Sounds like we had a couple there, but thank you very much. All those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries and the agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to approving the meetings from our March 25th, 2022 meeting. So if I could please get a motion to approve the March 25th meeting minutes that were sent out by Kim earlier, please.
So moved. This is Jill.
Thank you, Jill. And if I get a second, please.
Second, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. So the March 25th, 2022 meeting minutes have been approved, and that motion does carry. Next slide, please. All right, so just a quick reminder of our norms. This subcommittee work is very important because we're trying to gather the inputs of multiple stakeholders from across a variety of different areas that are related to education so that we can really form a great, robust draft model that will go forward to PEPSC and then hopefully forward to the board and then on to the General Assembly. And so it's very important that we do follow our norms in all of our discussions. I also know that there are several people who have reached out and like to give some feedback or to have some conversations outside of our meetings. And so if you ever feel at any time that you did not have an opportunity to bring up something important during the meeting, or if you think of something after a meeting that you were unable to bring up during one of our official meetings, you can always reach out to Michael or I, and we will make sure that that information that you're sharing with us gets sent out to the entire subcommittee so that they can use that and have that frame of reference as we move forward in our work. Next slide, please. So the guiding principles for our work, and in the work we're doing today, I think this is going to be critically important for us to keep these guiding principles in mind. The first one is, does this have impact on students? And the second one is this something that we would be able to measure in an authentic setting? So is it something where we could actually see how students are progressing and how the impact is affecting their ability to learn the material that's being presented? Next slide, please. For the estimated timeline, so originally our goal was to have our portion of the draft completed by December 2021. And we got lots of good work done for the past year. And then as we moved into December, DPI started taking the notes that we had gathered from our sessions and formed that into the draft model that was presented earlier this year. So now we're moving into the point where we're going to begin modifying that draft model to really help fine tune and to find places where we need to make some changes, or to say that there's some things that we really like about the model that we want to keep. So right now we will have 3 additional meetings. We have the meeting today. We will also have a meeting in June and in July. In August, the draft model coming out from all 4 of the subcommittees will be presented to PEPSC for discussion. And then in September, PEPSC will vote to approve or disapprove the draft model. If it is approved by PEPSC, it would then be presented to the state board in October for discussion, and the state board would vote to approve it in the November-December timeframe. So just to kind of give you some perspective of kind of where we are on our trajectory of getting the draft finalized, and then getting the draft to PEPSC and then on to the state board. Next slide, please. A couple of reminders. We are now in the phase where the subcommittees have the autonomy to make changes to the current draft that we think need to happen. So the draft that was presented is a draft, and it is a rough draft, a first draft, and we have the ability to change things that we think need to be changed, or to accept things that we think are good in the model that we would like to see happen in the licensure draft model that will move forward to PEPSC and then on to the state board. It's really important that as we do our work, that we focus on our specific priority buckets within the advancement and development responsibilities and roles. However, we do have an opportunity to provide feedback to the other subcommittees. And during the breakout sessions today, one of the things that I am going to ask your groups to discuss is any feedback that you would like to pass on to the other subcommittees. Again, this is not a one and done. So if it's something you think of later after the meeting, if there's something that comes up in a discussion you're having with someone, or feedback that you get from a colleague or someone that you're discussing the draft model with, there will be opportunities for us to continue providing that feedback to the other subcommittees so that they're able to consider anything that comes up during our meeting while they're having their discussions and working on their part of the draft model. So there is a place for you to put that today. But again, if there's something that comes up in the future, you can always reach out to either Michael or I, and we will pass that information along to the correct subcommittee chair. Another thing that's really important is that quorum is not required to finalize any changes that we make in our subcommittee, which means that if we come up with ideas, but we do not have that quorum met, those ideas can still be included into the draft model. And again, if you're unable to make a meeting and we are doing something that we're doing a vote and we don't have quorum, we do have an opportunity to send out the vote outside of the meeting. And so Kim would be able to send out a voting process outside of our scheduled meeting time so that we'd be able to gather the votes of the committee members who were unable to join us for a meeting. This is the draft that will be sent to PEPSC. Hopefully here in the next 3 months. And then once we finalize that draft with PEPSC, it will move on to the state board. Next slide, please. This is a quick review of our roles and responsibilities. For advancement and development, we are at the top of the list, and you will see that there is some crossover with some of the other subcommittees. So in a second, we'll take a look at the Venn diagram that's on the other side, but thank you so much for making that a little bit bigger, Kim. You must know that my reading glasses are a necessity for me on a daily basis now. One thing that's really important to keep in mind as we do our work today and as we do our work in June and July is that we are working on the policy piece now. We are not working on the implementation. We will have an opportunity to look at the implementation in the future if the policy piece is approved by both PEPSC and the state board, but that work is not what we're currently trying to do. So right now, what we're really trying to focus on as a subcommittee is determining those specific competencies that each licensure level would have and that need to be met in order to move to the next licensure level. Determining how principals, mentors, and teacher leaders will be supporting the licensure model, determining the configuration of the measures that are needed for each level, the verification process. So how would teachers actually demonstrate that they've completed those competencies, and who are going to be the people that are determining whether or not they successfully completed those competencies. And then finally, determining the rules to use for the professional advancement accounts. Now, today we're going to be working more broadly on the draft model to determine what are some changes that we feel needs to happen within these roles and priorities on the draft that's already been presented. As we move into next month, we're going to start working more on the specific core competencies that would be across the levels of licensure, and also looking at how some of those like things like the professional advancement account would play into that, and what those rules would be to use that money. Kim, do you mind going over to the Venn diagram, please? Thank you. So this Venn diagram has advancement and development in the center and that large dark teal, dark green color. And you can see where the other subcommittees overlap with us, and where they also have roles and responsibilities that fall outside of the license, or the outside of the advancement and development subcommittees' roles and responsibilities. So as you're having those feedback discussions today, I did provide a picture of the roles and responsibilities for all of the subcommittees. So as you're discussing maybe some feedback that you would like to share with other subcommittees, you can kind of see what their roles and responsibilities are to help frame what feedback you would like to provide, if any, to the other subcommittees. Next slide, please. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go ahead and give Julie Pittman the mic so that she is able to discuss with us an updated infographic model for the draft.
Well, good morning, Maureen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Julie.
Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me to join you today. I am first happy to report that I will begin the first of at least 11 teacher feedback sessions on Wednesday of this week with teachers from all across the state in a variety of different LEAs. I'll report those findings to the subcommittee chairs and to committees before your June meeting, and know that you'll be able to consider teacher input as you move to finalize the draft before submitting it to the larger PEPSC Commission. Second, as a result of numerous formal and informal meetings with teachers across the state over the last 2 months, and taking into consideration emails and social media postings over the last few months, I feel like there are some significant adjustments to the current model that you're considering that can account for early feedback from the field, address concerns, align vision and desires for advancing compensation and accountability, and get us all to the ultimate goal of advancing our profession. So in past models, there have been additional licensure levels beyond and above License 4. And I believe this not only confuses the goals of the draft model, but inaccurately portrays those roles in question. In reality, and my interpretation, is that License 4 is where the majority of currently licensed teachers would fall and would continue to grow with the experience-based pay for years of successful student growth and teacher impact. Currently, the former L5 or Classroom Excellence and L6 or Classroom Leader are causing some confusion. So let me try to clarify this for the purpose of this conversation. The purpose of the model, as I see it, as y'all have built it, is to build and grow the profession of teaching from within in order to more successfully grow our students. Across the state, I hear things like, we must do a better job of supporting beginning teachers, or give veteran teachers the autonomy in selecting professional development that they need specific to their classrooms, or offer teachers leadership and growth opportunities without having to leave the classroom, or finally, give flexibility in scheduling to learn from and collaborate with each other without having to get substitutes or cover each other's classes. I see all of those things in the model that has been created, but they are not clearly being conveyed to current teachers. What they see is that if L5 or Classroom Excellence and L6 or Adult Leader are the top 2 tiers in an upward mobility model, they are limited or possibly unattainable, and teachers are stifled. The perceptions are that if building principals select those levels, only a certain few teachers will get them, resulting in favoritism and competitiveness rather than collaboration that fuels growth in the field. What I know is that our current situation today, the real perceived only advancement that a teacher can make in education is to leave the classroom and become an assistant principal or similar role in the district. Given that, I offer that you could change the way you view this licensure reform, putting classroom excellence, or maybe even calling it classroom leader position, and the adult leader, or call it teacher leader, as possible pathways or positions beyond the classroom that could be applied for if candidates held a license for and other job specific requirements, then they could see this pathway better. Currently, these jobs exist, but at the local level for the most part. Coaches and facilitators, along with advanced teaching roles and mentors, already exist, but as separate roles and jobs. Often these are locally funded teachers who move out of the classroom but remain on their step of advancement through the compensation model. More than likely, the LEA determines the job description, which can vary from district to district or even school to school. In one district, an ITF, or instructional technology facilitator, may be a lead mentor, PLC director, data analyst, and co-teacher for the school in which he or she works. In another district, an instructional coach or district-wide mentor may visit classes to assess or monitor teachers only 3 to 4 times a year. This is currently an equity issue. How are we as a state equitably building capacity and growth for our teachers, thus equitably serving all of our students? If this committee builds these roles as positions allotted and funded by the state with a job description and expectations that are equitable within and across districts, then we build capacity better. These positions are possible pathways for leadership beyond the license for, which is the traditional classroom. But they require a license for and expert experience to help support those BT and veteran teachers who are in the classrooms daily teaching our kids. The advancement isn't just up to the principal to evaluate and pick, but up to the district and state to support, grow, evaluate, and sustain. There will likely be districts where there may be a wealth of teachers who want to move into these positions, but whose LEA positions may be limited. That offers a great opportunity for those qualified advanced teachers who want to take positions like these upper level places in hard to staff districts close by their own home district, thus building capacity and growth of teachers in lower performing or hard to locally fund or resource schools. I offer this newly envisioned model as a way to see how teachers can advance, develop, grow, and impact the profession across the state. I also see this as a way for EPPs to lean in at all licensure levels, offering credentials and supports along the way, especially in the opportunity to train teacher candidates in the traditional way into a License 3 level, but also supporting those levels prior to License 3 and continuing to support those in the License 4 and beyond. It has long been my vision that continuous, visible, sustainable, and transparent support and training from the pre-K-12 classroom up to the EPP and back into the districts is the best way to show future teachers that we are all working together to create a robust pipeline into the profession because we are working together. And that alone could draw teacher candidates into the profession we're all dedicated to build. Seeing this adjusted model may well bring understanding and cohesion and answer several questions that are currently out and about in the field in moving the goals of licensure and compensation reform forward. I'm happy to take any questions that you have, or I can yield back to Ms. Stover for directing the subcommittee.
Thank you so much, Julie. Really appreciate you joining us today. Just one question I had. Could you tell us a little bit about the purpose and the process of the listening tours?
Yeah, so these are not just listening tours, but feedback sessions. And I have worked very closely with superintendent as well as recognized teachers, teacher leaders from across the state. So we're looking at previous teachers of the year, previous and current teachers of the year, beginning teachers of the year. We've also had some superintendent and district level suggestions for teachers who would be good to give some feedback that are representative from within their districts. So we'll have an opportunity for every district to have several people from within the classroom weigh in. The meetings or the feedback sessions will be about an hour and a half long each throughout the state over the course of the next 3 weeks. And I've worked with the research team at DPI to help look at how we can develop questions so that teachers can give authentic feedback. So we'll start with a base level understanding of how the draft model stands, and then ask for authentic feedback, both quantitative and qualitative, from teachers in those meetings. This is not a marketing tour. This is literally trying to get the best, most robust feedback from hundreds of teachers across the state. And then we'll work to bring that quantitative and qualitative feedback back to the subcommittee chairs and PEPSC and DPI leadership in a report in June.
Great, thank you so much. And Melissa, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much for this. It really pushed my thinking. One question I had was about the classroom leader role and whether that role would still primarily be a classroom teacher. The way I recall we had originally envisioned that was that individual would be teaching in the classroom and opening up their classroom for others to come and model instruction, not so much that they would be out of their classroom leading learning. And so was curious about that and just how that would be communicated, given that it seems like it's being put with other roles that seem to be not classroom leading roles, and whether you think that will be clear in this type of diagram or any other conversations you've had about that.
So while I think some pieces of the answer may very well lie in the implementation phase of this, I think that my understanding is that those teachers would still be in some capacity in their classrooms, but also serving as maybe advanced teacher roles where people could still come into their classroom, see how excellent teaching and learning can happen, but also I think an important part of that role, as I understand it, visiting districts that have similar roles like this already in place, is that those teachers are then also able to have reflective conversations with people who come into their classroom, leading feedback sessions, being able to talk through pedagogy and content. And so having some flexibility in being able to also not be in the classroom for a portion of the time so that they can partake in that very important reflection and feedback is part of that. So I still see them in the classroom. That's my interpretation, but also I am not the expert in this. I'm trying to help build a conversation within this subcommittee that might take into account the questions and feedback that I've heard from teachers in the field, several hundred of them in the last few weeks.
And thank you so much for that question, Melissa. Just so everyone knows, in the breakout sessions, you will each have an opportunity in part of your group work to look at this model and kind of give some feedback and clarity. So if you have concerns like that, Melissa, please make sure you annotate those and document those during that breakout session. And that way we can get that information back to Julie and her team so that we can continue looking at ways to modify and improve this kind of updated look at the way that the framework might work. Laura, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Maureen. We may get into this. Actually, I'm going to start my video. We may get into this a little bit in this breakout session because I had not looked ahead at what we were actually doing in there. But it sounds as if there's some conversation around these positions at the advanced level, which I think just my impression of this, I also have heard some feedback along what Julie referenced from teacher groups and social media and various things. And it feels like that is a different conversation. If we are advocating for the state to create new positions that have a specific purpose, that falls under a different sort of lens than just looking at licensure. I think part of the problem with the public perception of the model right now, as far as the level 4 pieces go, and I'm just focusing on that end of the scale right now, is that the way, when you look at the graphic, when you look at the documents, it is the clear implication is that if I work my way up to that level of licensure, I can get paid for that. Where the reality is that just because you hold that level of licensure does not mean that you're going to have that salary or that position. And so it feels like the conversation is shifting, that we are now starting to focus on advocating for certain kinds of positions, which maybe there are certain licensure pieces or credentials, and we have that now, right? There are certain levels of licensure that you must hold in order to hold a certain position in our state. So I don't know that that's anything really earth-shattering or different. We do that now. These kinds of positions would be different, though. And I think that one of the things Julie said was focusing on positions that are at the state level that can support early and beginning teachers. There have been inequities in that. We know that some districts have had the new teacher support program, for example, and others haven't. And that does make a big difference. That's just one example. So I love the idea of these additional positions that really can focus on developing teacher leadership out in other ways besides the assistant principal. But I do think there's a real gray area and a lack of clarity around how that looks different and what the role is with this group or these subcommittees, and the intertwining of the position and licensure seems like it might be a separate piece, especially when we start talking about salary. So I'll stop there. I know we're going to have breakout rooms, but that's just I just wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Laura. Appreciate it. Jill, would you like to go ahead, please? Oh, sorry. I heard someone. Oh, did you want to answer the question, Julie? I'm sorry. Do you want to give some feedback? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, while I appreciate and hear what Laura is saying about that, and I do understand sort of the gray area around that. I still think it's a piece of the licensure. If you look at teacher licensure working all the way through license 4, and then looking at the classroom excellence and adult leadership, I think to your point, I think we're already in the place of asking for positions, because as it stands right now, in my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that those license levels would be limited, because that's just my understanding, that when I've heard folks speak at the state board on the reporting on this, is that those areas are already being asked to be limited in each district. So I think this sort of just clarifies how we look at that, rather than keeping it as a possible attainment or upward mobility, is I guess what I've been hearing. I'm sorry, that was really confusing.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Julie. Really appreciate it.
Maureen, this is Jeff. If I can add a little more to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do, Jeff.
Great. And I think, Laura, your questions are I think, great for helping to clarify it. As I see it, we've already got a dozen districts or so that are already implementing those 2 advanced teaching roles positions. And I think what this model does is sort of streamline and create some state level structures that will define what the certifications for those positions are. And I think that's what this model does, is that we will now have some state level certifications similar to if you were to get an ESL license or an AIG license or a global teacher certification, that those would be, add-ons to your CPL that you would have now. And then you would use those in a position that if you're an ESL teacher or an AIG teacher, or similar to an assistant principal, you may have a teacher that's got a CPL and they get an MSA, but they're not going to be able to serve as an assistant principal until they're in an assistant principal position. So we have a dozen districts or so that are already doing these positions. So this model creates some consistency across districts. I think it sort of defines what the expectations are for teachers serving in those positions, and then creates some expected competencies for what that looks like. I do think the model envisions that there would be more of these positions in districts, and that hopefully the state will support that at some point. But at this point in time, a lot of districts are already using either federal dollars or local dollars or converted state dollars to fund those positions separate and apart from their regular classroom teachers. So I think that's really where the model builds on what's currently happening and sort of creates some structures for helping that to continue to expand in new ways. And Julia Marina, I think the way that you've laid out this, I think helps with some of the confusion I had heard was that the only way for teachers to continue to advance was to move into those advanced credentials. And I think that is an option for teachers, but I think it helps to clarify that the way you've got it written out here, that those are additional add-ons and not the next step that teachers would pursue. It's there if they want to pursue it, but not necessarily required, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Jeff. And Laura, just real quick, Jill had her hand up, and so I'm going to go to her first, and I'll come right back to you. So Jill, if you'd like to go ahead and make your comments, please.
Yes, and mine are well, Jeff, thank you for those comments, because some of that was what I wanted to point out. But I also just wanted to throw in that speaking as someone who also serves on the licensure subcommittee, and I think that there are a couple other people in the meeting today who do double up on these two committees. I feel like this change that Julie's put in front of us also reflects some of the discussion that we've heard in the licensure committee around those same issues. So this looks to me like there's been several mention of we need to address this graphic, and I think that this is really clarifies the work. So I just, I think licensure committee would be interested in seeing this as well.
Thank you so much, Jill. I really appreciate that. And we'll be sure to add this as some of the feedback that we do pass to the licensure subcommittee chairs. Laura, if you'd like to go ahead and make your next comment.
Yeah, and then I promise I will stop because I know you want us to get into our breakout groups. But so I do think clarifying the graphic, to Jill's point, clarifying this graphic or the graphic or whichever graphic we end up with, to make it clear that we're not talking about guaranteed position, a little more clarity on the how the positions are separate from the license certainly would help. I do think, and maybe we're going to get into this more, but some of one of the other things that Julie said, and of course that I have great interest in, are the opportunities for EPPs to lean in at all licensure levels, was, I believe, the language that she used. And frankly, we have not seen a lot of that. So I'm very anxious to hear more about that and what the vision is related to that work. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. And that will be coming out of the prep and entry. And so we'll be sure to get that crossover feedback from them as well. so that we can make sure that those questions are answered. But if you have anything specific that you would like to either ask prep and entry or that you would like to weigh in with prep and entry, please be sure that during the breakout session, you put that in the feedback section so that we're able to clarify that and get either those answers for you or provide that feedback to the licensure or prep and entry subcommittee.
Well, and I'm glad to do that, Maureen. But one of the things I saw on the graphic earlier with related to us are skills and credentials, and what are the pieces that would serve as evidence or verification of those things. And I know that, you know, we've had this kind of, I feel like we've kind of talked in circles for a lot of months to a certain extent, which that's part of it, right? That's part of the wrestling with the work. But, you know, when we start looking at things like coaching, teacher leadership, mentoring, those are things that are very, very present in a lot of programs in in advanced programs, in master's programs, coaching certificates, lots of things that happen that, you know, when I look at the most recent presentation to the state board, you know, micro credentials are acceptable in advanced roles, but master's coursework that is also evidence-based, and a lot of those projects and things that are very, you know, evidence-based that include real-time data with real-time students and real-time evidence of learning are not included. And so that's why I'm excited by Julie's comment that, you know, this gives an opportunity for EPPs at all levels, but it feels like in the interest of keeping the committee separated, there also is a lot of bleeding and overlap. And so I just want to, you know, I raise that because it feels like this would be something for our group to talk about as well as the prep and entry or other groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for those comments, Laura. Julie, do you have anything that you wanted to add to Laura's concerns and comments there?
Yeah, I think her comments are very in line with the questions and comments that were discussed in the prep and entry meeting, subcommittee meeting that happened last week, where there was a lot of conversation about how EPPs would be able to lean in at all levels. And so just, yeah, I would, I guess, encourage anyone on here to talk with the folks, especially some of the EPP folks who were on the prep and entry committee meeting last week, because I think you'll see a whole lot of cohesive understanding. And while this particular new model was not presented there, the conversation was definitely around EPP support and leaning in across, which has sort of brought me to this particular conversation today.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. And it looks like, Melissa, you have another comment you'd like to make?
I just had a quick follow-up question for Laura, and whether I also sit on the licensure subcommittee, and you were just talking about, I was just thinking about the fact that this is a competency-based framework, and you mentioned like there's evidence from master's programs of competency, and just wondering, I'm just trying to think like if we've missed something in our survey of the different types of tools that could be used to assess competency, and whether there is something attached to master's degrees other than the credential you get for the hours spent. And so whether there's something else that's attached to it that we could use as an indicator of competency.
So I'm not sure what you mean by attached to it, but I'll give you just a couple of examples, and there's other EPP, Patricia Bricker and Nancy. Well, there's other people on the call too, but I know, like, for example, when the teacher leadership standards came out a few years ago, one of the things that UNC Charlotte did was take a hard look at those and talk at great length with our school partners around, tell us what your expectations and needs are for advanced teachers. Like, what do you see them needing to do? And some of the things that we're talking about now are the conversations that bubbled up, you know, several years ago. We need folks who can mentor new teachers, step out with leadership, interpret data, you know, really take the lead on those kinds of more veteran activities. And we want to value those folks. We want to, you know, extend and support their training. And so we have I'd say all of our master's degrees at this point have a heavy dose of teacher leadership. Teachers are asked to partner with their schools and their principals on coming up with action research projects that include real student data in real time, showing real impact, which is what everything on our committee group says that we want to be able to do. We've got projects that are in, capstone intensive projects where teachers, study. They have research-based literature to support interventions, and they have data drawn from those interventions, and those may be shared at their school, or they may be doing them, some sort of a PD opportunity within their school to share and disseminate that work to try to, increase awareness. And so I think when you say things attached to it, are there specific projects, activities, things that are happening in those programs? Absolutely, that teachers could show and give evidence of all the time, 100%. But what historically has happened is there has been a review, or there has been some high levels of partnership or understanding, or accreditation processes or whatnot, things that have happened behind the scenes that allowed us to put the faith in those master's degrees, as opposed to, frankly, the very narrow interpretations that have sort of bubbled up over a couple of studies that were, I don't want to get all into that, over the last couple of years that didn't have a direct impact on EVOS. There's a lot of other things that are happening in master's programs across the state that are incredibly beneficial and allow teachers to show their impact in lots of different ways. So I think the question, and Melissa asked a great question. I don't know when the focus started shifting to assume that if you have a master's degree, it's just not worth anything. I totally don't agree with that at all. I think that there is incredible amounts of teacher leadership and those kinds of activities that I just described that are happening in master's programs that I would put up against any credential, any micro-credential, heavy doses of projects and activities and a deep, in-depth dive into those things that help foster all the things that we're talking about here. So I think those degree programs that, again, are happily to be accountable in any framework could definitely serve as evidence for these pieces that we're talking about here. But absent someone not wanting to take the degree, they could certainly provide evidence, as we have said is one of our pieces, that those teachers are able to have an impact. I think the question then becomes, if we are not going to trust that the EPP is doing that on our end, then who is reviewing that? That kind of goes back to another question we had on this subcommittee. If I am a teacher and I have this massive amount of work, research-based project with data to show that I'm having an impact on my students, or that I'm able to coach, or that I'm able to mentor other teachers to have an impact on their students, which, we have had examples of all those in my tenure, then who is looking at that, right? Like, it goes back to that partnership. If we have a certificate program or a degree program that has been approved by DPI, that has been approved as meeting these standards, that has been approved at meeting these credentials, why is that not enough to suffice for these credentials here? It's been enough for years. I don't want somebody being an assistant principal who hasn't gone through a principal training program. But somehow when it talks about teacher leadership, if they go through the teacher leadership program, somehow the master's degree is not enough. So I think when we start having these conversations, these are things, we always talk about the devil's in the details. Here's some of those details that I think, and I know Julie, she and I have talked a bunch, Maureen, you and I have talked. I know that you all support these programs and these efforts. But I think the problem has been the public perception in these documents. That's not always 100% clear. So I'm really glad to hear that there's some movement behind the scenes to revise the documents. I think that would be super helpful. But those are the kinds of pieces, I think, things like that. And that's just one example that folks latch onto, that if we can really get some clarity around that, that would be helpful.
And thank you so much for those comments, Laura. Really appreciate it. and definitely valid concerns. One thing just for the whole group here as a reminder is that what a lot of what Laura was speaking about and what Melissa was speaking about would fall into the implementation phase. And those are going to be very important conversations that we will need to continue to have. But at this point right now, we're really looking kind of more at the policy so that we can develop a robust framework so that that implementation piece can happen if the framework is approved. Patricia, I see you have your hand up too, but in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to do two things. Number one is if you could please put your comment in the chat, and then we will be able to discuss that when we come back from whole group. And then if you could also incorporate your comments into the discussion you have in your breakout group, that would enable us to move into the breakout group so that we have time to do some of the bulk of the work that we really need to get finished today. And then we will be able to bring up those comments during whole group. So if that's okay, that would be fantastic if you don't mind. And I appreciate that if you don't mind. All right, thank you so much, Kim.
I do feel like sometimes my voice doesn't get out into the conversation. So I will do that, but I just wanted to make sure I have a chance to participate.
Yes, absolutely. And we definitely want you to participate. Absolutely, 100%. Again, if you want to put it in the chat, and I will make sure that when we come back to whole group that we go to your question first. I just really want to make sure we have a chance for everyone to get into the breakout rooms to do the bulk of the work for today. So I appreciate your grace in letting us move to the breakout sessions, and then we will ensure that your comments are elevated and that you have an opportunity to bring up your comments during the whole group discussion. Thank you so much. So we are going to go ahead and go into our breakout sessions. Kim, if you just want to flip to the next slide so we can just go right into what we're going to be doing. I just put the shared folder in the chat. This was also sent out by Kim earlier, so you can access it either through your email or through the link in the chat. We are going to be working predominantly on policy development. So we're kind of not really looking at that in the weeds piece yet. That will happen with implementation. So as you're working through your breakout sessions today, please just kind of keep that frame. We're going to be a couple things I would really like you to focus on today. The first one is, should we change the current language that we are using, which says impact, effectiveness, and growth, to continuously improving students during the school year? So what we're looking at for K-8 and year-long 9-12 classes, or for semester 9-12 classes, is a student better on day 180 or day 90 because they had the teacher that they had? So that's really what we're looking at. Like, so should we change that language maybe to make that a little bit clearer, that we're really looking at holistic across the year growth, that we're not looking at specific growth that is directly tied to it one test one day? We also want to clarify that, do we want to clarify that the Pathways to Excellence model will not affect the career teacher status? So if you just want to have a little discussion around that, I actually put the career status law into the breakout folders for you, so you can take a look at that law. That's very important to a lot of our teachers who do have career status. So I think it's important that we have that discussion to determine if we want to like officially vote and say that the work that we are doing will not affect those career status teachers. Also updating the current infographic. So the infographic that Julie presented to you, each one of the groups has a copy of that infographic. We added some additional notes to it to kind of provide some clarity, but please change things, tear things apart, put notes off to the side. If you want to put notes in the comments, whatever you would like to do, so that we're able to get your feedback on what you think about that model and ways that you think that model could be improved, clarified, or things that you like about the model that Julie presented today. Any other things that we need to change in our advancement and development responsibilities and priorities, please make sure that you articulate those. So that I put a copy of the draft PowerPoint that Tom Tomberlin has presented multiple times in the folder as well. So you can take a look and see what are the A and D pieces that we would like to change in that. And then finally, if you have, I'd like to share the feedback of the other subcommittees where you think they could change. Again, like looking through that draft model, anything you would like to pass to another subcommittee. And I did include the roles and responsibilities for all the subcommittees in that folder for you as well, so that you would have access to that to see what each one of the different subcommittees is doing. So Kim, if you would like to go ahead and put us into breakout rooms, once you open the folder, you will see that there is a document for each group. There is a PowerPoint slide with the draft model for each group. And then you also have the reference materials in there for you to use as you work through your breakout sessions.
Maureen, just one question. Do you still want it to be 55 minutes?
Yeah, how about we How about we do it 40 minutes and kind of see how we're doing, and then maybe we could that way we have enough time to do the whole group instruction or whole group instruction. Sorry, totally teacher talk. Whole group discussion.
Okay. And there will be 3 breakout sessions with between 3 to 4 members in each session.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have everyone back, I think. I hope you guys had some good time in the breakouts to be able to have some great discussions. We tried to make it a little bit longer this time because I know we always run out of time. So hopefully you had enough time. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start because I was in group 1 and I told Nancy that I was happy to share out. So I'm going to kind of share out some of what we talked about in group 1. So first of all, for the changing the language idea to continuously improving students during a school year, everyone in our group agreed with that. We feel that that would be important. And we also thought that that really kind of helps move away from the emphasis on EVOS, still gives EVOS as an opportunity for teachers who will get EVOS scores, but also helps students and teachers understand that really what we are trying to do during the school year is to grow our students continuously throughout the school year, not just look for positive results on the standardized testing. For the second question, should we clarify the draft model changes about licensure and the career status law? We said that yes, we should clarify that that what we're doing with our work is going to impact only the licensure statute, and that we are not looking to make any changes to the career status law as part of the work in the Advancement and Development Committee. And that was kind of born out of the budget and compensation meeting that occurred last week, where they discussed the very similar, but for national board certification pay and for grandfathered master's pay, that their work was not looking to change the laws that are around those, only to change the licensure laws. For the third one, updating the infographic, were there any changes or updates that we thought should be made? And so we thought that we wanted to clarify, can the licensed for teacher work with BTs? So would there be opportunities there for the licensure to work with the BTs? But we also wanted to remain true to the idea that you're being compensated for additional work. So we thought it'd be important to pass to budget and compensation that maybe they should look at maybe some ways that if a licensed for teacher is taking on some of the additional duties, that would also be worked on with the the classroom excellence and the adult leadership teachers, that that those teachers should be compensated for taking on some of that work, and that we need to be very clear that the level 4 teacher is not required or not expected to take on those additional roles unless they want to. We also thought that this kind of clarifies and helps communicate the whole process a little bit better. Everyone really liked the arrows kind of leading out of level 4 into those additional advanced credential opportunities. And we also thought that it was responsive to what we've been hearing. In our discussion of whether or not we should change the terms classroom excellence and adult leader, we decided that for clarity for now, because those have already been kind of clearly explained in the current infographic, that we should keep those for consistency, but it might be something we might want to consider as we move forward in the future. We also wanted to know, if you move from level 3 to level 4, do you need to demonstrate that continuous improvement for 3 or 5 years? If so, then the license 3 needs to stay for 5 years. But if that's only demonstrating effectiveness for a different period of time, that we would keep that license 3 at 3 years, which is what it currently states. But we just need to clearly articulate that so people understand what the expectation is to move from level 3 to level 4. And then finally, will the level 4 teachers be supported by an adult leadership teacher? So we are thinking like maybe not. They could be a very strong level 4 teacher, but there's also opportunity for every teacher to continue improving our teaching practice. So maybe that level 4 teacher could also could also be supported by that adult leadership teacher, even if they are a highly effective teacher, because there's always opportunities to grow. And then finally, for the things that we think need to be changed to the current draft, we have heard a lot of feedback from the field that those master's degree programs, a lot of teachers are very disappointed that the master's degree is not included in this. So we were thinking there's 2 different things. One, which would be implementation, but could we build the skills that teachers gain through a master's degree into the implementation phase to demonstrate effectiveness and impact on their students by continuously growing their students using the skills that they've learned in those master's degree programs? And then Nancy had a really great suggestion that maybe what we do is similar to how the EPPs are validating and verifying that the students coming out of their program have met the requirements in order to be a successful classroom teacher. Maybe we put that back also on the master's degree programs and require them to demonstrate evidence from students with artifacts that their program is training teachers to improve their teaching practice through the work that they are doing. And so that's pretty much all we had. Did I miss anything, Nancy?
No, I think that you have covered it. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we will go ahead and move to group 2.
I don't think we decided who would be our spokesperson. Okay. Melissa, do you want to jump in, or?
I can start, and then other folks should jump in. So in terms of changing current language, we thought that it did make sense for some of the reasons Group 1 indicated for changing it so that it didn't automatically make people think solely about measures associated with standardized test scores. The term continuously made us wince a little bit because like most improvement is not continuous. It, you know, might have fits and starts. So we just thought saying helping students improve during the school year is sort of a broader way to say the same thing that might be a little more, that might feel a little more attainable. For number 2, we also agreed we should clarify that it won't affect career teacher status. For number 3, we did have a lot of discussion about the new infographic and had a lot of questions that, you know, we may not resolve today, but one is about the license 1 and the fact that it says it's not the teacher of record, because our previous understanding was that this person would be leading their own classroom. And so we are trying to understand whether there needed to be some more clarification about that. Our sense is that this, the opportunity culture model of having a more advanced teacher sort of mentoring beginning teachers that don't have a lot of training or experience, and having them sort of rotating, having that advanced teacher rotating through their classrooms, but really the beginning teacher is really the one primarily in charge of the classroom. Like that's sort of what we think maybe this is trying to allude to, but it would be helpful to get more clarity about that. And if that's the case, and the classroom excellence teacher is the one that is responsible for doing that, then that likely changes how we were thinking also about the classroom excellence teacher, where we thought that they would be primarily leading their own classroom as opposed to rotating through other teachers' classrooms. And if that's the case, then maybe the classroom excellence teacher, and I know we're not supposed to be getting into implementation, but like that the competencies for that we had previously talked about for the classroom excellence teacher might need to shift a little bit to be more focused on teacher leadership, because those are really different skill sets that are needed if you're opening your classroom as an excellent teacher for other people to come again, observe and, you know, maybe talk about what you're doing rather than like going into other classrooms and really being more of a coach. And so again, I think it also blurs a little bit of the distinction between the classroom excellence teacher and the adult leader teacher. So that was something we talked about as well, was like trying to figure that out. And then we talked about whether classroom excellence teachers, this was to my previous point, whether classroom excellence teachers do lead their own classroom, and if so, how to make that clear in this graphic, because it right now sort of seems like the different colored bars leading up to the arrows are classroom teacher roles, and the ones on the right side of the arrows are adult leader roles. And so, whereas again, our vision of the classroom excellence teacher was that they're sort of primarily a student leader role with also some adult leader responsibilities, and like whether there's a way to indicate that, perhaps by making it the same color as the license 4 professional teacher and making the adult leader the same color in purple as the AP principal and district office. Again, not sure what the best way is to do that, but I think there are a lot of teachers who want to stay in the classroom, who don't want to primarily be working with adults and who want to primarily be working with students. And I don't know that right now this graphic displays that. And then we also talked about just the idea of like whether there's like a longer term play here, like whether this would sort of be the model that we would want to have in effect forever in terms of communicating with teachers, or whether at some point the goal would be to attract and retain enough high quality qualified teachers that license 1 would no longer be necessary, that we wouldn't have to be training teachers on the job. I'm sure I missed something. I was trying to talk fast. Anybody want to jump in and add anything there quickly? Okay. And we didn't really get to 4 and 5, but I think some of what I just talked about in 3 is feedback to share with other subcommittees.
All right, thank you so much, Group 2, and thank you, Melissa, for sharing that out. Appreciate all the comments. Andrew, did you want to add anything to Melissa's questions about the License 1 teacher? So we will definitely get some clarification on that, Melissa, to make sure we're all on the same page across the subcommittees. So I can email out that information to the entire subcommittee once we get some clarification on whether that License 1 teacher is a teacher of record, or whether that License 1 teacher, the vision is that they would be co-teaching with the classroom excellence teacher to kind of get like that extended opportunity to work with another teacher and kind of learn the teaching craft from an expert, while they're also like learning how to kind of do all the other pieces that are so important to the education career field. Okay, did anybody have any questions or comments on Group 2? Okay, then we will go ahead and move to Group 3, please.
This is Jeff. Patricia and Alfred, we did not figure out a share out either, but I'm happy to share if that works for you guys. So Group 3, we started with sort of continuing from the group discussion on master's degrees and their usefulness as or how well aligned they are with the competencies for the advanced teaching certifications. And I think I've seen in the chat some of that continuing as well. So we discussed that and captured that in our notes as well, that master's degrees are well aligned to those competencies, and should be considered as a possible criteria for the advanced teaching role certifications. On the first question, in terms of language, as a group, we had no strong feeling one way or the other, but we felt that we need to clearly define what those terms mean. Continuously improving students' language is much more holistic than impact, growth, and effectiveness, and obviously could include impact, growth, and effectiveness as well. One concern that was brought up, though, is that growth and effectiveness are both positive terms, while impact could be positive or negative. So obviously, we want to make it positive impact versus just impact. The other issue we discussed is continuously improving would indicate the need for multiple measures of progress over the course of the year, and not just a single end of year assessment of progress, which I thought was a good point. Obviously, students will have ups and downs in their improvement over the course of the year, so definitions would need to be inclusive of that. Growth as a term refers to student action. Students are growing in their learning, while effectiveness really refers to teacher actions, a teacher's effectiveness at helping students to grow. So obviously, those terms are not necessarily interchangeable and are sort of referring to slightly different things. But obviously, continuous improvement, we would want both students and teachers to be continuously improving. Students in their learning, teachers in their practice over the course of time. So really, we landed on, we need to clearly define what those terms are. and figure out in what context it's better. We also had a discussion about, rightly or wrongly, the term effectiveness now is sort of very closely tied to EVOS, which might be why there is concerns or confusion about the model and the use of the term effectiveness versus, being able to be much more inclusive of the other measures that of student progress that are included in the model. We agreed with group one that we did not really see any direct connections between the career status law and the proposed model. Career status really deals more with employment issues versus the proposed model deals with licensure issues or the competencies that teachers must demonstrate in order to practice their craft. So I think similar to what the Budget and Compensation Committee did, which Maureen mentioned last week, I think that included in this should be a clear statement that this model is not proposing any changes to the current career status laws or policies. And then we were able to get to the third question. We did not get to question 4 and 5. But on the third question, we made some comments in the group one presentation. So one is we need to get clarity around the move from license 3 to license 4. That it was our understanding that license 1, license 2, and license 3 are all 3-year licenses. And if that's the case, a teacher who comes into license 3 would only have 3 years to demonstrate 3 years of effectiveness, which actually puts them at a disadvantage. So that license 3 maybe should be a 5-year license instead of a 3-year license. And then we also, on license 4, it says that teacher is supported by an adult leader teacher. We did not think that license 4 teachers actually received support per se from the advanced teaching role. So that support comment may need to come out. We also discussed, and I know this has come up in our discussion today as well, is that we are beginning to surface a lot of implementation issues or questions. And I think rightly so, that for a policy to be workable, you have to consider how it's going to be implemented. And while we know that the subcommittees are not tasked with working out implementation questions or issues, that we may need to create a parking lot for those so that we don't lose those key questions or issues as they come up, so that whenever it is time for those issues to be addressed in the future, that we haven't lost them along the way. So we may just need to create a parking lot for those. And again, we did not get to question 4 and 5, but Patricia and Alfred, anything else you would add?
Jeff, I think you did a great job. One thing I just wanted to add was, in thinking about the feedback we're getting from people in the field, there are a lot of questions about master's pay and national boards. So I think it would be helpful to have something connected to whatever gets put out there about thinking around that, whether it would be retroactive or included or not, but I know that's a big question. So under the feedback for other subcommittees or additional feedback, I would add that.
Great. So thank you so much, Group 3, for giving us that overview. And did anyone have any additional questions or comments for Group 3? Okay, so I do want to make sure, as promised, that I give Patricia the opportunity to take the floor so that she can discuss her comment that she placed into the chat as we were going into the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Maureen. I think we did have a lot of chat around this since before the breakout rooms. I just wanted to make sure that we're really thinking about systems that already exist that we could build off of rather than creating new systems that circumvent those. And so when we think about EPPs and master's degrees, there's a lot of review that already exists and review that could be looked at. And maybe it's adding to what currently happens at the state level rather than them making a whole additional system when there are high standards already in place for advanced level licensure.
Yeah, thank you so much for elevating that, Patricia. Really appreciate it. So we have about 3 minutes left. I would really, since it seems like we all were in consensus about the career license status, I would really like to take a vote on that so we can make sure that we have that clearly articulated coming out of this meeting, that we are not looking to affect the career status law. We are only looking at the licensure law. So if I could have someone please make a motion that we are saying that coming out of our subcommittee, we are not impacting, changing, or looking to affect anything with the career status law.
This is Nancy, so move.
Thank you, Nancy. And could I please get a second?
Second, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. Thank you all so much for that. And I'm not sure if anyone saw, I put in the chat based on the comments that from Melissa and then also from Jeff about maybe a way that we could kind of incorporate the change in the language that would be reflective of kind of what we're trying to say with impact, positive impact, growth, effectiveness, and improvement. So I put in there, and we don't have to go with this by any means, just kind of an idea, but a teacher's practice will result in positive impact on a student's growth as measured from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. Does that clarify kind of the language around what we're trying to kind of capture in that idea of a student being better for having had a teacher?
Maureen, I'm gonna jump in really quickly and say to you what I said in our meeting, which is, I think when you use the word growth, and I think Jeff alluded to this, it just raises the specter of EVOS. So I personally think that, I don't want to say the language is not important. I think it's very important, but I think what's going to come down is, how are we going to measure that? What are the options for measuring that? So we can say continuous improvement, or we can say positive impact. Those are both really cliched terms that we've all heard thousands of times over the years. I think what it's going to get down to is, what are the options for measuring that? And that's really what's going to make the difference. So we can have the language. I don't think there's anything wrong with the language that you have there, but it does. Anytime you see the word impact or growth, it's going to trigger EVOS. That is going to be one of the options, but if there are other options that folks can use, I don't have an issue with that language. I think the options, frankly, are going to be the stickier wicket.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that, Laura. And I completely agree. That's why I made the initial suggestion that we remove those terms, effectiveness, growth, and impact, just because those immediately make my teacher brain go to, we're talking about EVOS. So how about this? Since we're at 11:30, I'll give you guys some homework. The first piece of homework is, let's kind of think about how we can rephrase those terms in a way that would be a little like demonstrate more of a holistic approach to how we want to see how teachers are doing with their kids. And we will be working a little bit more on some of those pieces of how is that actually going to be measured, and that will also come out of the implementation phase, of course, but we can also give some kind of like guidance coming out of our subcommittee work to kind of frame how that language would then be actually implemented with the ways that we're going to measure that growth. And I think that's a very important point that Laura brought up that we really need to be cognizant of and be thinking of. And then the second thing that I would really love for you guys to do is to start thinking about kind of the core competencies that would exist in each one of those different licensure levels. So like, what would I need to be able to do to move from a level 1 to a level 2 teacher? What would I need to do to move from a level 2 to a level 3 teacher? And not specific tasks, but kind of in broad ideas or core competencies. And with that, I'll just double check and make sure we didn't have any last minute comments that someone wanted to make. Great. Okay. So we will be getting out more clarification between now and our next meeting. So please be on the lookout for emails coming either from myself Michael or from Kim to kind of answer some of the questions that came up today as we get those answers. If you think of additional things that you want to submit as feedback for the other subcommittees or feedback for any of the things we talked about today, please be sure to just forward those to me or Michael or Kim via email. We'll make sure that those get recorded. I do thank you all so much for your time today and for the thoughtful conversation and for really engaging in this work so that we can continue doing the good work of trying to develop this model in a way that is truly reflective of the teachers in our classrooms, our EPP partners, all the stakeholders, and all looking at the focus of improving educational opportunities for those 1.5 million students that we have in North Carolina's classrooms. And with that, I appreciate you guys staying on for 2 extra minutes. If I could please get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. And if I could please get a second.
Second, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate it. All those in favor of adjourning? Anyone opposed? All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate it. And our next meeting will be June 3rd from 1 to 3 p.m. Kim, did you have anything else you needed to add?
No, thanks, Maureen.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you again in about a month.
Thanks. Have a good day.